Okay.
Just relax. Oh my goodness. Okay, it says we're live. Let me go to the page and find
Hello.
that. Oh, Charlotte, you keep me laughing, girl. You make me laugh.
You tickle my funny bone.
Awesome. All right, now am I even in the right? Let me switch accounts. I'm clearly not in the right account. I got all my different YouTube accounts and Google accounts. Okay, now we're cooking with fire. Um, let's just check the sound. Hey, Kelly. I'm super excited for this too. New Jersey Rock Girl Allison, welcome. Charlotte, can you say something so we can get a sense of how the sound is?
Hello. Hello. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Can you hear both of us well, guys? Hey, Ali's Tarot, great to see you.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hi, Ali.
Awesome. Let me know how the sound is, guys. Hey, Sparkles, welcome. Great to have you guys here. If you guys wouldn't mind giving it a quick like, that would be fantastic.
You know what? I haven't actually shared it just now. I'm going to
Oh,
share it again on my channel while we're getting this going,
while we're live, that sounds
just
great.
in case anyone's not here yet.
Yeah, totally. Hey, Swatinanda. Hope, love, and sunshine. Okay, sound is perfect. Thank you. I can hear you both. Thank you, Flower and Forgiveness. Thanks, Iris. Hi, everyone. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Kay Moon, and I am a twin flame channel and Western astrologer. And this is the final interview for Shadow Work Week. I'm thrilled that we got to get it rescheduled. Shadow Work Week, in case you missed it, was an opportunity to get to know the shadow energy within you that and we all have one, but how to start working with that shadow energy in a way that allows you to be more whole, more self loving, and have better experiences with the loved ones you have in your life. I'm joined today by our rescheduled guest, Charlotte of Happy Twins 1111. I am thrilled. Welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. I love doing lives with you.
I love our lives too. We tend to have a pretty rocking time when we're
Yes.
doing lives. So, if you aren't familiar with Charlotte, she is the host and creator of the Happy Twins 1111 YouTube channel, where she provides pick a card and general guidance and reading and channeled messages for the Twin Flame and Lightworker Collective. She was probably one of my first twin flame friends from the YouTube verse. And I have to say, since I've met her, I've just been so honored and so humbled to be connected to someone who's so thoroughly connected with source, spirit, and her own life force. Charlotte first picked up her first set of tarot cards when she was 21, and she said she did not understand them at all. She said it took her 20 years to understand the cards. And it was honestly through her awakening experience that she decided to start a YouTube channel. When she first started the channel, she thought it would be, just a hobby, something she'd do for fun here and there, maybe share a couple of things because energy was moving through her, wanted to share it in a way that felt congruent and aligned. She said she didn't know what to expect, but since then, she's been deeply humbled by the magical nature of what it means to be alive. She now reads for people all over the world. Many of you are familiar with her channel, which I will drop a link to in the comment section in a moment. She says that the one thing she's learned about reading from reading from people all over the world is that the one universal that we can all relate to, whether we are rich or poor, black or white, no matter the continent, no matter the decade we were born in, everyone experiences pain. And it's everyone's desire to find a solution to that pain. And now it's her mission and hope to share light and truth in a way that allows other people to receive it, get congruent and aligned with who they really are, through the channel and with everyone who comes in contact with her through her channel. Charlotte, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for such a beautiful introduction.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
I'm excited to be here. Shadow work is my favorite topic.
Really?
I think it's been unwittingly been the focus of my work, and when I first started my channel, no one was really talking about the shadows. It was, you know, oh, when's he coming back? Or what's happening here? And I'm kind of like, bitch, you need to change. You need to sort yourself out. And it wasn't very well received initially, you know, identifying with the shadow aspects and recognizing that there's so much power for growth in that. So I was stunned when my channel took off. It was actually quite slow moving initially. And I used to get some really angry comments about, oh, you know, it's so negative, you're always telling me what's wrong with me. And that, I guess that's not what people thought tarot was for initially, but that's what comes through me. It just, it's how I read. It was how I was meant to channel and guide. And so yeah, it's a topic that's I didn't understand actually previously when I started, that this is what it really encompassed, but it is primarily about evolving through awareness of our shadow aspects. So yeah, I love this stuff.
Beautiful. I feel like the major arcana in tarot really lends itself to the exploration of that journey, you know, kind of our journey into shadow, our resurrection into light. No?
Absolutely. And, you know, I think you mentioned at the beginning about my journey with tarot. You know, when I first received it, it was a stage in my life where I was kind of rediscovering an interest in these kind of topics, and a friend purchased it for me. And I'd read it using the book, but I didn't really understand it at all. And I read it that way from the book for years. Once I woke up and I kind of connected with it in a different way, that story, and it's so obvious to me now. I'm excited to teach this again, because it is the whole story of the journey of our life is there, every chapter. And the shadow experience stands out, you know, through the whole deck.
That brings me to my first question for you. How would you define shadow?
Oh, we're all made of light and dark. It's the part of us that is hidden, I think, but expresses itself in every which way. I see us as literally the yin yang symbol. We're made of both light and dark, and that the objective is to be balanced in that, not to reject our shadow aspects and punish ourselves for not being perfect, but to coming to loving acceptance of it, so we can balance it and, you know, just learn to rise above it with our consciousness. I think shadow is a part of the human experience. And if you think about what light and dark energy is just dense. You know, this table is dark energy. It's hard. It's not made of light. It's made of dark, dense, you know, real energy. And we have bodies that are made of, you know, real energy. So light is the more subtle energy that is part of our higher consciousness that we're bringing through into this experience of humanity. And learning to be balanced within it, how to be human with all of its shadowy aspects and its different energy, and how to be, you know, conscious in our light at the same time. I think the yin yang symbol summarizes it so beautifully, you know, that a lot of people talk about releasing the shadow. And I think it's important to understand that it's not so much about releasing it and letting it go. It's about releasing it into awareness so you can deal with it and bring it into balance. You know, we're helping the shadow become tame and become calm. So we, you know, when our consciousness is balanced and above it, we can be aware of it without being controlled by it. Yeah, that's what I think the shadow is.
Beautiful. Thank you for that explanation. And just, you know, just spell it out for people for whom the topic is completely new for. What would be a denser emotion or experience that people would qualify as shadow versus a light emotion or experience?
That's a really good question. I think in simple terms, our shadow aspect feels rough. You know, there's a million and one emotional labels we could assign to it, but because it's just such a variable energy, but generally it doesn't feel good. When we're leaning into our shadow, we don't feel good. When we're leaning into the light, we feel high and happy, and when we're balanced in the middle, we feel still and good and peaceful. It's where we're meant to be. But, you know, shadow emotion, any ill feeling that you experience is your shadow aspect being triggered and moved. my guides gave me a fabulous analogy in a reading recently. They asked us to imagine that we were in a bowl of water, and every experience we have moves it. We're constantly bumping into things, colliding with other people's energy, and the water in our bowl is going to get moved. Sometimes people dive in it and can't swim and trying to, use us as floats. But the point is we actually have power over that water. When it moves, it's very uncomfortable. It's, unpleasant, uncomfortable feelings, painful feelings as well. But we always have the power to bring ourselves to stillness. We don't have power over what's coming at our bowl all the time. We can't control our external, but we can learn to balance ourselves within it and learn to be still despite it. So, yeah, I think shadowy feelings just don't feel good. But we don't have to be in them. Yeah, that's been the nice bit of learning about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And that kind of brings us to the next question, kind of naturally flows, because they don't feel good. A lot of people do tend to repress or reject those parts of ourselves, or want to turn away from those parts and others. Those of us who have been on a journey of growth and personal development may have even experimented with transmuting or healing the shadow, but I've noticed you have a different approach. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think it's not necessarily something that needs to be healed as much as it needs to be brought into balance and tamed. Shadow work is, I think it was Carl Jung called it, the path of the warrior. It's hard. In fact, I'm going to read this out to you because I was looking at this the other day and I just sent this to someone I know. This is Jung on the dark night of the soul. And it made me think about how we, resist facing our shadow because it's so painful. Here we go. So it says, people may pass through several dark nights of the soul until they experience the profound joy of their nature. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. One becomes enlightened by making the darkness conscious. And that's so true. Shadow work is for a warrior because it's hard. When we release shadow, when the bowl's moved and it all bubbles up to the surface, we feel horrible emotion, uncomfortable feelings in every respect. As I said, there's 1,000,001 different feelings that could come up through that shadow aspect of self. A lot of it is hidden. We don't actually look at the shadow or why we're feeling or acting this way. We just, suffer through it. To become conscious is to face it and say, okay, this is not healthy. It doesn't feel good. What is it? What is it about myself that's driving me to this state? And it's about lovingly bringing it back into balance. I think this is why meditation is so powerful, because we learn to get above the emotional body, which is where we feel the discomfort. When we meditate and we bring everything into alignment, we move up into our higher self where we can just feel peace in all of it. And the bowl of water is no longer raging. So from there, we can observe the shadow with clarity and without feeling all of that discomfort. And that's where we find the power point of not just evolution and growth, but that connection to our consciousness and also peace, to be able to carry ourselves through our day without having to sit in that shadowy energy that's so uncomfortable. So a big part of it is, learning to rise above it so you can observe it, but also to balance yourself within it so that it's not so bloody uncomfortable. Everyone has shadow. We all express it differently, but we all have it. And some of us were raised with better coping mechanisms than others, or different. We all had some dysfunction, but for some it was more extreme than others. And again, even in individuals, whatever area of the spectrum they're on in terms of the dysfunction they were raised with, we all handle it in unique ways. But one thing we can all do collectively, and that everyone has the power over this radiant strength within themselves is to just bring it into balance. you know, healing is so important, but it's a lifetime's work. We can't just heal the shadow and make it better overnight. I think the most important thing in the meantime is to just bring it into balance so that you can, you know, from there have the clarity to move through it and continue learning from it and facing it. But yeah, it's the path of the warrior, shadow work. It's hard to face yourself and to face all of that discomfort, and, you know, to be accountable to who you are. Whatever happened in our experience, we're accountable for ourselves now, and that's where our power and focus needs to be. So yeah, to answer the question, I feel like I went off on a massive tangent there, but such is the nature of channeling.
Right? No, you did great. You answered the question beautifully. Thank you so much. And you also kind of talked about why we need to embrace the shadow, why we need to balance it. And you've alluded to it, but it sounds like you've also kind of shared and highlighted here that when we reject it, it just allows the shadow to get out of balance. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just out of control. When we have no power over our own state of being, we're at the mercy of everything that is external to us, you know, because we're constantly going to get triggered. The bowl's going to move. You know, think of the shadow aspect in other terms as deep wounds, unhealed wounds. Now, if they're on your physical body, every time someone nudges you or accidentally presses it, it's going to ouch, you know, ow. And so how much that hurts is going to determine how strong your reaction to it is when you're projecting it externally. If someone bumped you really hard and it was super painful, you'd probably be swearing and pissed off and maybe would shout at them, even though the logical, calm part of you, excuse my French, but you know, the shallow aspects is very similar in that respect. People come around and poke it completely unwittingly. Life happens, and the shadow aspect in it hurts, and we react. You know, when we're furiously angry, when we're, you know, hysterical with sadness, or, you know, engaging in dramatic conflicts, that's the shadow aspect. That's the part of you that is hurting, that has been triggered and moved by probably the external experience. And because we're unaware of it, we don't even know why we behave that way. I think it's really, should we say, supportive to forgive ourselves and recognize as well that everyone has that. And for me, it helps me forgive other people to actually recognize that about myself. How people behave of how much they care for you or love you, or it's not a measure of how good or bad a person they are. It's a reflection of the pain that is in them, that is out of control, and they don't know how to bring it into balance. And every evil act that was ever, you know, done onto others, onto the world, is born of that shadow aspect. So, you know, we have a responsibility to ourselves and the wider collective and the world around us to really be accountable to ourselves and how we show up and how we manage that part of ourselves. And like I say, some of us are raised with better coping mechanisms, and, you know, we don't express our shadow in such dramatically dysfunctional or painful ways, thank goodness. You know, we don't all descend deep into the darkness and become psychopaths and do really evil stuff. Most of us cope to a point, but we all express the shadow in unpleasant ways. There's no one on this planet that has, you know, without real cause, or all of those different things. You know, a lot of people are, it's like Jung was saying, you know, to face yourself and acknowledge that, and to be humble about, you know, your own aspects requires big strength. And I think, you know, narcissism is a buzzword as well at the moment. Everyone's a bloody narcissist. But actually, you know, I think narcissism as a personality disorder is very extreme on the spectrum, but the ego will try and protect itself by justifying its shadow aspect. you know, a lot of it is just dramatic lack of self-awareness and your own dysfunction. And it's so painful anyway that to try and face it and deal with it is just like, you know, people get blinkers. And so, you know, people do bad things without being narcissists or psychopaths. We all have it in us. And with the right environment and pressure points being pushed, we all have the capacity to do horrible stuff. So I think we all have a responsibility to take care of that part of ourselves. And it's vital work for our own well-being and for us as a community. Yeah, lots of world leaders need to do some shadow work at the moment, actually.
I was just going to ask you to talk a little bit through that. Do you think that is what we might be seeing playing out on the world stage at this time with the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
You know, it's unfathomable to me. And I don't think I'm alone. I think the whole world of civilians is looking at this situation right now saying, you know, we have a set of societal laws and rules and expectations of how we conduct ourselves, and the vast majority of us abide by it. But, you know, world leaders are allowed to be psychopaths and start bombing people. It's deep, isn't it? That's shadow work on a different level. I have to be honest, it's beyond my comprehension at this stage. But, you know, as we discussed, shadow exists on a spectrum. Some people's yin yang symbols are really distorted and very, very messed up, and, you know, so shaken up that it's tough. It's tough. I still try and stand in forgiveness and compassion for those people, and recognition that their pain must be really tough for them to be in this position, that they're doing these things. But yeah, it is shadow. It's just dark energy, which is horrible to be in. And you'll understand, I think everyone's been in a point of sadness or grief where it felt impossible to actually feel better. You know, that cliche of there's always light at the end of the tunnel. When you're actually in that very dark place, it just feels so impossible to imagine anything outside of it. That's what the dark does. It shuts you off from the light. And I think if you stay in it a long time, it can make a person crazy and ill. And we see, you know, that's where we see the people tip into the extreme end of, you know, what I guess in scientific terms, psychopathy and sociopathy, and just awful, ill-dignified behaviors. But it is still just dark energy. And we, you know, I do feel to some capacity, given the right conditions, we all have the potential for that, because we're all made of the same stuff and we're all born equal and balanced and pure. You know, it's our experience that distorts us, and some people get distorted more than others, and not everyone has the strength to find their way back towards the light and to balance. And as hard as it is to observe the atrocious things that people in their shadow aspect can do, I still try and hold love and compassion and forgiveness for it. It's very hard to accept it. But it is a part of our human nature. It's happened since the dawn of time, and is still happening, sadly. But I think the world is responding differently than it ever has before. You know, everyone's looking at this and it's not right. There's not many countries that are in support of it. I think the civilized world realizes war is not an option for conflict resolution anymore, and it's very sad that it's still happening. Hopefully this will be the last war we see, and not because we're not here, but because we've risen above it. And who knows, deep stuff.
Very deep stuff. I know, like me, you are also an active open channel as a clairaudient, and I'm curious if there are any members of your guidance team at this time who would like to share a message with us around how to embrace and work with the shadow that we're seeing play out on the world stage.
Okay. So it's more of a collective council energy than a single aspect of my guidance team.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about just being together in light. And I think one of the, sorry, I'm just moving my mind out the way because I'm not meant to be thinking, just feeling. So the tendency towards feeling powerless in this situation, when we see it playing out on the world stage, has to be, they're saying, pushed into the background so that we can just stand in our light with it. Collectively, energy is everything. What we actually say or what we actually do is a direct reflection of the energy we've created. But we have an opportunity just to create that energy, and the things that we do don't have to be as literal as we might think. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't take literal actions as far as donating or however we can contribute in the physical realm. It's about emphasizing how much the energetic contribution is enough, and it's big enough to create a dramatic impact. We already know through science that the collective conscious, when combined, shifts energetic fields. There are some fabulous studies into this, and I'm guided that people need to educate themselves on what collective consciousness means, because when lots of people share the same heartfelt vision and intention, that energy is way more powerful than whatever actions are taking place around it. It will have an impact on, in transmuting and moving things towards a more positive outcome. We actually spoke about this, you and I, Kay, in the way it's going through, but collective meditation, actually having specific times within your communities where people can, pray at the same time or share information and intention at the same time. It's about everyone standing up in light and recognizing the power for transformation that has. What they're essentially saying is, if we stand still and just stand in our light and allow ourselves to radiate that strength, we can be a powerful force in driving a more positive change through this outcome, that we mustn't undermine or dismiss our ability to create light from just where we stand. Everyone can contribute to this, no matter their means or their standing in life. It is literally just about dropping down into our heart spaces and sharing the available light and intending for a more positive and safe outcome, and to stick with that. If everyone can stay with that in mind, and I think it's already there, to a point. It's about reinforcing it and being more focused in our intention of it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Nice. We spoke about this, didn't we? About doing a round robin of stuff, and
we did.
It's along those lines. I think we need to come together and be focused in our intentions to generate more universal love
and healing energy, seeing peaceful resolution, visualizing peaceful outcome, conjuring the vibration of peace, and forgiveness and compassion,
not
as
allowing
much as
ourselves to get
possible.
tangled up in fear.
Yes. So bringing it back,
get caught in the fear of it.
Bringing it back from the macro to the micro level here. How do, in the individual level, how do we identify our own shadow? And then how do we communicate and or work with that in, our most connected relationships, family, children, loved ones?
I guess like where I started, the first thing is to just learn to be balanced, and we're just battling to survive in the storm. We're not going to have clarity, and it's going to be very difficult to observe the shadow because we're in pain. We're uncomfortable and we're suffering, and everything's chaos. A meditative practice or a mindfulness practice is essential, in my opinion, for shadow work, because from there you can perceive it clearly. Learning how to self-soothe and tame the shadow back into balance gives us an opportunity then to explore it and to start healing that aspect of ourselves. In many respects, once the shadow aspect is in our awareness and we're facing it, we then have the opportunity to start nurturing it from the perspective of loving ourselves better. We don't heal our shadows by shaming ourselves or judging ourselves or punishing ourselves. It's about lovingly come to a place of forgiveness and acceptance. Transmutation happens when we release all of the resentment and the regret and the rejection that was contained within it. Those 3 R's are one of the most profoundly painful aspects of the shadow experience. And once we, are able to work with the individual cases of shadow wounding that we have, those 3 R's are constantly being put back to bed. Triggers are a gift in that respect, because a trigger is literally someone pushing the wound and showing you where your shadow is. And obviously, for twin flames, that's a process that occurs throughout the whole journey, no matter how ascended you are, no matter how far along you are the path. Being triggered is how we learn and grow. And so learning to identify that trigger as a signal that, something's out of balance here. I need to go in. Why am I feeling that? Why am I behaving this way? What does this mean? And how can I bring this part of myself back into balance? I know it sounds incredibly simplistic, but it literally is a process of loving yourself. And actually, the human condition is all about judgment and punishment, and we do this externally. When someone does something bad, we shame them. You're disgusting, this is awful, that's just atrocious, I can't believe you did that, and then we reject them, and so we learn to do that to ourselves. This societal obsession with shame, judgment, crime and punishment, and to I guess because it scares us when people behave in these dark ways, we want to, segregate ourselves from it. But we also do that to ourselves. When we recognize our own shadow, we have a tendency towards, oh my God, you're such an idiot. Why are you doing that? You suck so bad. You suck at life. I'm a loser. I'm this. We have this incredibly destructive inner voice that was programmed by that societal norm of shame and judgment to just beat the living shit out of us on a daily basis. And so it sounds incredibly simplistic, and it is, because it is. We have to train that voice to be loving. We can't beat ourselves up. We can't grow. Shame doesn't create change. Judging ourselves is essential, but you can judge from a place of peace and equanimity and love. So it's really about recognizing it, being able to say, okay, that I did this, it wasn't right, it wasn't in congruence with the truth of who I am, this is how I felt at the time. You have to take responsibility for digging deep and looking for the root of it. There are so many different ways we can do that. I think all healing practices to a degree disrupt the shadow. When we go for healing or some kind of holistic treatment, even a sound bath or Reiki, or we meditate, what we're doing is, as we bring everything into balance, we have an opportunity to observe what's on the surface, and the healing will bring stuff to the surface for our review. And it's not all going to come at once. It comes a little bit at a time as we can deal with it, and it comes in layers, like peeling back the onion. But it is an ongoing process. When we do readings, I get a lot of people that get frustrated saying, but I've been healing for ages. When does this end? And it doesn't end. This is part of being human, is to realize we are imperfect beings. We're very flawed. We're going to act out. We're going to, have a triggered shadow aspect that is sometimes unpleasant, and that's okay. We can learn to bring it back into balance and to begin transmuting it. I'm a walking, talking evidence of that process. I was deeply drowning in my shadow aspect and spent a whole life depressed. And I'm not, when I look at how I behaved when I was in pain, it wasn't always light, and I could look back and judge myself and be harsh, or I can look back and think, wow, look at that pain I was in and the chaos I was traversing. And how do I be a better person now? This is where my power is in my present. And I think that's a beautiful thing about being human as well, is that we do have power. We mustn't ever think that we're victims of this awful human condition and the dark that's always leaning in. You know, we do have power. There's strength in us to be who we want to be. And it's okay to not be perfect all the time. But it's simple. It's about identifying the shadow, being brave enough to stand in awareness of it, being aligned and balanced enough so you can observe it from a clear place, and then lovingly working through it with yourself, you know, and offering yourself the compassion and understanding so that you can become, you know, the person you want to be. I think a lot of it is about reprogramming as well. A lot of our ill-dignified behaviors, they're not just connected to the shadow, they're connected to the pre-programmed, you know, self that was raised with specific belief systems and mannerisms and ways of dealing with things. And sometimes we have to rewire that at the front end. Taming the shadow aspect makes that part easier too, you know, but it's definitely about awareness, first and foremost, awareness and alignment, so that you can get above the discomfort long enough to actually just observe it and start working with it. I think the biggest thing people mistake, the biggest mistake that people make when they're healing is they don't understand that, you know, shadow work is painful. If you don't know how to balance yourself within the shadow, you're going to find it unbearable. And a lot of people just give up. It's just too painful for them to keep, you know, because it brings it all to the surface and it rages and it feels yucky. But it's very simple. It's a simple meditative practice to get aligned and mindful so that you don't have to be flawed by it. And that was what we was talking about with the bowl. It's the difference between, you know, being in that stormy ocean and not being able to actually transform anything because you're surviving, you're fighting for survival, or being, you know, in stillness where you can just float about and figure stuff out. You know, you can be more productive when you're aligned. So yeah, the first step has to be a meditative practice that allows you to stay balanced, and then just keep facing the shadow and loving yourself through it. Whew, big rant.
Beauteous. And that brings us to our listener generated Q&A. Thank you, Charlotte, for sharing what you've shared so far. It's wonderful to have you here today. ASTRO asks, how can we find the light when we're in a dark place or dealing with darker energies? And I love this question because cyclically, you know, we all go through moments where we are fighting deep anxiety, or we've, you know, made a blunder at work and we're fighting deep shame, or, you know, something's happening in our personal life and we may be deeply depressed or saddened by it. Yeah. When we're in those richer, denser emotional places, how do you access light from there?
That's a great question. It really is. It's a big one. And I think this is variable because I think it depends on all of your circumstances. And let's say the baseline from where you've begun. Life is going to be full of challenging and difficult experiences, no matter who you are, right? Everyone has a cross to bear. Everyone faces grief, sadness, loss, suffering in all of its forms. Finding the light is always about slowing down long enough to recognize that it's always there and you can balance yourself in it. We genuinely all have that power. And you just have to be diligent in holding yourself there. Emotional regulation is about getting above the emotion. And, you know, you'll see mindfulness coaches, and Eckhart Tolle talks about it. He calls it the pain body, you know, where we can elevate ourselves above the pain body. So it doesn't mean we're not aware of the pain. It doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable. What it means is we're not drowning in it. You know, the goal isn't to switch ourselves off from ever feeling anything. The emotional body is our primary intuitive receptor, and our feelings inform the experience we're having. You know, rage means we're being threatened and we need to take care of ourselves. And, you know, it doesn't mean our feelings are always accurate because they're distorted by the programming that's in place. But we do need to be connected to our emotional body, but we don't have to be so deeply in it that we're drowning when it's moving about in a really uncomfortable way. And so the answer is always, you know, to come back to the light, you just have to recognize that it is in you. And for most of us that haven't developed or learned or discovered a meditative practice, it's really hard to believe that. I mean, I remember reading Eckhart's Holy long before I woke up. And this concept of just complete peace and stillness, no matter what was happening in the world, felt so alien and impossible and unreachable to me. And I came back to that after I woke up and was just like, oh my God, you know, it's actually the simplest thing, but it's inconceivable when we're in the dark. And so you have to just trust it when you hear it and push yourself to do it. Do you know, I think getting, should we say, emotionally, mentally fit in mind and spirit is very similar to training our physical body. You know, it is painful to hit the gym every day and start putting your body through the paces. And you hear the same complaints and resistance. I can't do it. Oh my God, it hurts so much. It's too much. And then we start justifying when we don't need to do it. You know, healing at an emotional and mental level is the same. There's a tremendous amount of resistance. But at some point in our lives, we find that spark of determination, hopefully, to just push through the discomfort and stick with it. And I would say to anybody that hasn't diligently committed themselves to a meditative, a mindfulness practice, just do it. It's what makes everything okay. You know, the difference for me, if I'm going through some really tough stuff right now, if this would have happened to me 5 years ago, I just would not have coped. I'd have been on the floor. And even though it's tough, I'm still pretty flat. You know, I'm tired. And, you know, I'm definitely challenged, but I'm in no way in a suffering in a way that's so uncomfortable that I can't cope, which is where I would have been without, you know, this ability to hold myself in a balanced state. It's more challenging to hold myself because my whole world is going like that. So it's still uncomfortable, but it's the difference between sinking into the dark, sinking into your shadow and not coping, and between surviving and continuing to grow through it and being okay. So everyone has access to that. You know, when I first read Eckhart's Holy and other people saying that message, it made me think, well, they're just some, you know, divine spiritual gurus with magic powers. That's not real life. No one does that. Not many people do, because this concept hasn't been taught. But everyone can do it. You don't have to be special. The light is in everyone. We all have as much of it as we have dark. We just have to learn how to balance ourselves in it.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. And I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just add just a little bit. There's been some new neuroscientific research that has recently shown that the lifespan of an emotion in the physical body is 90 seconds. And so if you're able and willing to just let yourself feel full on exactly what it is for 90 seconds, the darker emotion does tend to dissipate. What allows it to go on and on and on and move from sadness and into straight up depression is the resistance and the story we tell about the meaning we are making about why we are sad, and repeating that meaning, repeating that story. Those stories can be self-abandoning stories. And so to access the light, I mean, it's, as Charlotte's been saying, it's just important to remember we are the light. So if the light is experiencing sadness, then you just be with the sadness. There is
the shadow aspect looks outwards for it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As well. It's
that's it.
It's codependent. Because we don't realize it's in us, we grasp desperately
to something external.
That might, and when it's not there, we experience another wave of rejection and panic and fear. And but it's always in us. You know, in fact, no one can actually give it to us. We have to find it in us. The external reality can only prop it up for so long, right? It's never going to be stable. No one else can have overall responsibility over well-being, because they're trying to take care of themselves, and it's in us all.
Beautiful. So thank you, ASO, for that lovely question. We have a question here. Where was the next question? How do we, this is from this is from Arpita Chandrasekhar. She says, "Hi dear, how do we value ourselves by valuing boundaries?"
That's a great question. I think the most important thing I can share around that is that, to value yourself requires that you know your shadow aspects, because our boundaries are usually determined by need and worth. And so if you don't value yourself and invest in yourself, your boundaries are going to be flimsy by default. When we don't love ourselves enough, it's like we were just talking about, and we reach out of us for the support we need, that also makes us less discerning about healthy boundaries, because we're prepared to compromise in order to get the vital loving sustenance we need, because we're not generating it for ourselves. So to value yourself, you have to commit to loving yourself. And people say, how do I love myself? But well, how do you expect other people to love you? A really good way is, what would I ask for in a relationship? And usually, they say things like, I'd like my partner to text me every day and just say, hi, how was your day? How's your day been? Or when we get home from work, to, for them to remember to ask me how I'm feeling, and if I'm not good, to reassure me and love me through that. Really simple things. But we are so entitled about what we expect and want in relationships and from others. And for most people, it doesn't occur to them to give that to themselves. And it's a game changer. Most of us will happily come home from work, and especially if we live alone, we don't engage with ourselves. We start washing the dishes and preparing food and watching television and calling our friends. And we don't stop to say, how are you feeling today, Charlotte? How was your day? We want to talk to someone else about it. We want to give our stuff to someone else. And that's the denial of the shadow aspect. And that, self-love is about actually showing up for you as a best friend would, a loving partner, a perfect parent. And again, it sounds really simplistic, but it's everything. And when we love ourselves, our boundaries are therefore by nature firmer, because we're taking care of ourselves. And you're asking, is this the right thing? Is this good for me? What would my best friend say, or the perfect parent? Or I think we compromise our boundaries. A lot of people will say that, oh, this person smashes through my boundaries every time. But it's our responsibility to maintain our boundaries. We get to choose where they are. And if we're loving ourselves, we choose our comfort, we choose our peace, we choose our well-being. Yes, we have to compromise sometimes and take care of others. It's not about being completely selfish, but sometimes we have to take care of ourselves first. Even we mentioned this the other day, an air hostess, when you're on the airplane, if you've got kids with you and she's telling you what to do in an emergency, she says, Mum, put your mask on first, please. If you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of others. So we all need healthy boundaries, and that comes through loving yourself and recognizing that you have to meet your own needs first. And that only happens when you actually start to do it. When you start to give yourself time to process your feelings, to talk through and reassure yourself, and to become self-sufficient in generating that loving, balanced energy for yourself. We look to other people for answers, but the truth is always in us. No one else can really ever give it to us. They can kind of nod us in the right direction and inspire us on the right path, but ultimately the wisdom is in us. Our soul is all-knowing, and the answer is always in us. So you just got to turn and face yourself. Healthy sense of self equals healthy boundaries. Just
beautiful. Yeah. It's crazy, because so often we look to get other people to love us in ways we won't even love ourselves.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely, we can't do it for ourselves, but we feel so entitled to that from other people. It's interesting, isn't it, the human condition of how it avoids self. And that's what Jung is saying. The shadow path is the warrior path. To turn and face yourself, it's hard. Yeah.
It can be, but it's also one of the most rewarding things we can
I love
do.
it.
I remember
I
saying
think
to a
when you
friend of
learn to
mine,
do
go
it
ahead.
with balance, you get
Mhm.
addicted to it. But it's a beautiful process because you always feel better afterwards when you know, bring something into balance and soothe a part of yourself. The high is worth it for me. Yeah.
Awesome. Sparkles asks, how do we speak the truth and honor ourselves without other people feeling betrayed? Hmm.
We can't. We
Go
can't.
on.
You have to accept that sometimes you're going to be the villain in someone else's story, and that their perception of you cannot be attached to it. You know, sometimes taking care of ourselves and having healthy boundaries means disappointing other people, and that's hard for, especially if you're very empathic and you're a people pleaser anyway. My whole life I put other people's comfort before my own, and I still struggle with the guilt trip sometimes. You know, when I have to say no or put myself first or create that boundary, I still deal with that uncomfortable stream of guilt and shame that my people pleaser shadow aspects it still clings onto. The difference is I no longer betray myself despite it. I'm able to observe it and say, okay, well, you know, I can feel that guilt and shame, but I still know I've done the right thing and I'm being true to myself. And I don't have to hold this energy. I can transmute it and give it back. I can come into acceptance with that person's disappointment because they are not my responsibility. And that applies to pretty much everyone in our experience, maybe apart from our children, if we have kids and we're parents. But in every other respect, we can't be authentic all of the time and not have other people be uncomfortable with that. It's part of your growth to recognize that we can't please everyone, and we mustn't even try to please everyone. It's exhausting work. And you know what? I just feel like some people you can't please at all. Nothing will ever be enough anyway. And we just have to come to terms with pleasing ourselves, and that being comfortable. I think people pleasers struggle with that because it does sound selfish. You know, that's their first instinct is, but oh God, you know, what about the other person? But sometimes, you know, it's appropriate to just say no and put yourself first. And you, in those instances, if someone else is going to feel rejected because of that, you're not responsible for their feelings. They are. You know, a healthy, balanced person wouldn't guilt trip you or shame you when you couldn't meet their needs. You know, they're in pain and that sucks, but your pain has to be a priority and your well-being has to be a priority. Yeah.
Beautiful. We have another question here from Hope, Love, and Sunshine, and this will probably be our last one given time.
Okay.
She asks, he asks, they ask, any recommendations about what to read or watch to learn how to balance ourselves as we're
Yes.
doing our shadow work? They say I always take such a nosedive into the abyss of darkness, and then it's really hard to get myself out of it.
Yeah. Again, this is so simple. Um, just look at mindfulness meditation practice in general. But if you listen to any of my meditations at the beginning of it, the first part where I ask you to breathe deeply and relax your body and ground yourself, it's called an induction. And let's refer to it today as a mindfulness technique. You know, your breath is your primary life force. It's your most conscious physical or elemental power, your most powerful one in the moment when it comes to balancing yourself. And when we count, which is usually part of meditative inductions as well, we engage the critical bifactor, the part of our minds that is constantly questioning, going around in circles, causing us anxiety, the thinking part of us that might be out of control when you're feeling rotten. So by breathing, just breathing and counting our breaths and instructing ourselves to relax and move back into good energy with I am statements, you just slowly start to come back to balance. Now, we can go deeper with that practice and become more expansive and aware and develop discernment around the individual energy bodies. But in its most simplest form, you don't even need a book. Breathe, focus on your breathing, deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. Hold yourself still and calm, count your breaths, tell yourself to relax every part of your body, and just find that point of stillness. Everyone can do that. Breath work, mindfulness techniques, meditation. Most of my meditation happens in 60 seconds, where I'm just literally, okay, I'm triggered to fuck right now. I need to get still, and it doesn't matter where I am. I'm just breathing and concentrating on pulling it all back to center. And now it's an autopilot thing. When I feel that movement, I'm triggered, something's happened, breathe. It doesn't mean I never lose control. I am human. I was raging in the hospital 2 weeks ago. You wouldn't have recognized me as Charlotte, the happy soul light being. I was, but once you kind of gather yourself and get your head above the water, we can always come back to that place. Sometimes the movement's big and it overwhelms us, and that's okay. But it's such a simple practice. It is literally breath work, focus, and remembering that your mind and body does as it's told. And that's one thing we understand about neuroscience, the power of suggestion and neurolinguistics. I am is the most powerful tool in your dictionary. When I'm good and calm, and I repeat that, I am love, I'm good and calm, you become it. I am balanced and aligned, you become it. Yeah.
Beautiful answers. Thank you so much, Charlotte. We have just a couple of minutes left. Would you like to maybe do like a 2-minute kind of centering for us, 2-minute come to presence for us?
Definitely.
Thank
I think
you.
as well, you guys can use this anytime. Just going to share with you how I come back to center. So you want to be seated, ideally. You can do it standing up if you want, feet firmly on the ground. And I like to hold my hands at center because it helps me maintain my focus there, but it's not essential. And just take a long, deep breath in through the nose, roughly for the count of 3 or 4. And then exhale all the way out through the mouth, roughly for the count of 4. Just by focusing on counting your breaths and that in-out motion of energy, you're already bringing yourself back to an aligned and peaceful state of being. Your whole body, intentional, calm and stable and rhythmic breathing is already coming back into balance. And so to take that deeper now, just close your eyes and just using your inner voice, say to yourself in your mind, I'm relaxing my eyes. I'm relaxing my mouth and my jaw. I'm relaxing my neck and my shoulders. I'm relaxing through my chest and through my tummy. I'm relaxing through my legs and my hips. I'm relaxing all the way to the tips of my toes. Just begin again with the eyes. You can already notice the more you send these instructions to relax your body, you can already feel that lovely energy of stillness begin to wash over you. Your breathing slows down and comes to a nice, gentle rhythm as you continue to send this relaxation through every cell and atom of your body. Just allowing it now to begin expanding outwards, to imagine this energy as light or color, and to just visualize it or imagine it in any way that's good for you, expanding from your heart space and moving in and around you. This lovely, relaxing energy, just bringing everything to a calm stillness. And again, using the power of your own inner voice. I am good. I am calm. I am centered. Love and accept myself. I accept this moment of peace. And once more, becoming aware of your breath. Really focusing on the sensation of the breath moving in and out through your nose and mouth. Bringing yourself fully back into your body, gently stretching your shoulders a roll. Just allowing yourself to come fully back into the room. Fully back into the present, eyes open and wide awake. So that was an incredibly short and simple practice, but for me, having done it so long, it's instant release. Even the first 20, 30 seconds, the more you practice that just for 2 or 3 minutes at a time, the more you'll start to develop the ability, because you're training your body to come back to itself, the mind and everything to come back to center. So you may need a little bit longer to start with, some of you, but keep with it. Yeah.
So wonderful. Thank you so much, Charlotte. I appreciate you being
welcome.
here and doing this with us
So
today.
lovely. Thank you so
That's
much for having me.
So we're going to wrap here, but I want to thank everyone who has shown up today to join us for this conversation on embracing the things that we can't change. You can find Charlotte's channel there. I just linked it in the chat for you. And if you would like to work with Charlotte, I believe there are some ways people can do that at this point. Yes?
At this point, yeah, I've been doing private readings pretty regularly, but they're only available to my mailing list. So if you want to be in the know next time I open my diary, make sure you're on the mailing list, which you can join via my website. I'm doing a class soon. The next one coming up is tarot reading, which I'm really excited to share. So that's a live Zoom class where I share everything I've learned today. It's a fun class for me because I actually am the teacher in part in that class. Most of my classes are channeled, but I'm engaged with that one in a different way. So I really enjoy it in a different way. But that starts in April, and I'll probably do mediumship again at the back end of summer. But for now, that's what you can book with me and come and join me on this ascension journey. And of course, we've got a lovely Facebook group where you can come and chat with us and share the love in your journey. All the links are on my channel. I'm sure you'll find them.
Extraordinary. They've also been linked in the comment section below this video.
Spirit release therapy. I almost forgot about that, but we do spiritual clearings. That's not as much of an interactive service because you won't see me, but you'll get a report from a spiritual clearing. But yeah, I think your audience have learned a lot about SRT through our lives already, so I'm not going to go into it. But it's a clearing of your energy body. A kind of clinical version of a shamanic practice, but it's all over there on the website if you feel you need something like that.
Love it. Thank you. All right. So thank you all for being here and for joining. If you are listening into the recording, you can find all these links below this video in the description box. For those of you who have joined live, thank you for being here. And for all, please hit that like button on the way out. It certainly helps the content circulate. And it is such an honor to be here with you as your host for Shadow Work Week. My name is Kay Moon. I am a twin flame channel and Western astrologer. And this was our final interview. You can find all interviews in the Shadow Work playlist here on my channel. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. Please subscribe. It's been an honor to serve you all. Thanks so much for joining us today, Charlotte.